Let's see if we can go live. Excellent connection, it says. Do we get any audio? That's the wrong thing. I'm just going to assume the audio works. So, we're back with the Tangent EVO E8 subwoofer amplifier. And I have bad news for a lot of you because I fixed it off camera. I wasn't expecting to, but it had a very, very stupid issue. So you can see we've upgraded our test speaker since the last stream, and we obviously have good audio right now. And the issue with this thing, the crossover potentiometer, that's the only issue it had. It's one of these terrible cheapo China pots that have very bad connections between the actual metal, these things, the pins, and the substrate where the actual carbon track is. It's an issue I've seen before, where these just, they make a bad connection. And this one in particular is rather bad because, let's see if we can make it do it again. It's sort of tightened up now. The actual potentiometer shaft holder wasn't actually clamped down because these crimps weren't really done properly. But it doesn't matter because the actual fault is in these bondings here. They just don't make a good connection. There's no fixing these, you have to replace them. So we still have some mucking about to do with this thing, because the only decent stereo pot I have lying around is a 10K one, and the original is 20K. And that causes a particularly nasty sounding issue where we currently have it set to the lowest crossover frequency, and it sounds like this. Now I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on your particular speakers, but we do have an excessively high crossover point, and if we turn it up to the maximum crossover frequency, it's just screaming hundreds of hertz at us. This is just terrible. Now, there's a rather simple way of solving this, I noticed, because we have a capacitor right next to the potentiometer, and if we put a 1 microfarad over that, it starts sounding just fine. So I think I'm going to be fine just putting this 1 microfarad cap over it and then putting it back together, more or less, because like this it sounds absolutely fine. It's got like just about 100 hertz top crossover frequency. I'm fine with that. I'm not sure if the scale on the casing is going to actually correspond to the correct crossover frequency, but no one cares about that. You just tune them to how you want them to sound anyway. People are showing up in chat, the usual suspect. Hello there. I'm going to assume everything's working since no one's shouting at me. So let's just power this thing off and have a look at how this ugly repair is currently looking. Because it isn't particularly nice, since my potentiometer isn't the right form factor for this case. I didn't like buying these China potentiometers because they just tend to fail. They never work well. They don't last, as demonstrated by this product. So that's what we have right now. A uglily wired in green potentiometer. Hey, David's Music just gave us €5. Thank you very much, David's Music. He's wishing us luck on the repair. Well, we've already had luck on the repair. We just need to put a 1 microfarad capacitor across this one, which I don't. It's labeled C20. It's a 0.22 microfarad one. that actually seems a 1 microfarad in parallel. I think maybe we'll just swap it out for a 1 microfarad in case this Sony speaker isn't really sounding as the actual driver does. We do need a bigger capacitor, that much is a given. So yeah, let's just get to work desoldering things. Robin Vandenite says he didn't finish last night's stream. Well, you've basically had everything spoiled. We just chased ghosts for basically the entirety of the stream. We were troubleshooting the amplifier and we just got nowhere. This morning off camera I replaced the other op amp here, and that of course made no difference, but when the way I found this issue, actually, the bad potentiometer, was I did that, pressed down, and then it started working. So yeah, there you go. This is actually a relatively common failure mode. I probably want to swap this one out as well, because this one is very likely to suffer the same kind of failure in the near future, because these crimp down potentiometer leads, they're just not good. They don't work. It's as simple as that. So let's swap this capacitor out and see if it sounds okay. If it does, then we'll wire up the other potentiometer for volume control, and then we'll just put this thing back together, I suppose. Rose Electronics wishes us a good fix, thank you. Getting this thing back in the case is going to be a bit annoying. It's not going to be mounted anywhere near as well as it used to be, since the new potentiometers are not going to be particularly well clamped to a PCB. They're just going to be hanging in the wires. Oh, come on. This thing does not want to get desoldered. This PCB seems to have very thin vias in general, because I've been having some issues getting solder to actually flow into them well enough to do desoldering, and we just ripped the pad off this board for that exact reason. There came the old 0.22 microfarad cap anyway. It's not connected anywhere on the top of the board, I don't think. It is not. Let's give you guys some extra exposure. Have an extra stop. That's looking way too dark. Come on. Brighten up. There we go. That's how it's supposed to look. So the new 1 microfarad cap goes in there. They've done a decently good job at labeling most of the components on the boards. They even have a value of this capacitor printed out, 224. It's just a shame that we can't trust the solder mask because it was wrong on the other PCB. Now we do have a pad failure here from my shoddy desoldering work, so we're going to have to compensate for that. You can see that that pad there is just no longer among us. So we'll just scratch a bit of a trace off with a blade and solder onto that. It'll be fine. You know what, I actually don't want to do that because it's too tight around there. So I'm just going to take a wire and jumper it over there. That's just going to be a neater solution altogether. we'll suck the solder off of that joint that we're gonna jump it to, because we want a fresh load on it. You always want to suck well and have a fresh load. Ooh woo. Let's get that thing soldered back. And fresh solder on there. Put some on the leg of the capacitor as well. And a tiny bit of flux, if I can find my flux. Just to make our lives a bit easier. There we go. Since we have flux on there, we don't need to pre-tin the piece of wire. We can just poke it on there. I cut it a bit too long, oh well. I need to cut it a bit shorter. That's just they're going to get in the way. Like so. And a big blob of solder on that, and it's going to be fine. There we go. That's good enough for me. Yeah, that's fine. So let's just power this up for a second to make sure it doesn't sound horrible. And then we'll move on to fixing the volume potentiometer, or rather replacing it with a 10K, and seeing what other crossover funkiness that's going to cause. Everything's hooked up. Do we have any horrible short circuits? No, I don't think so. On we go. On we don't go. Oh, probably. There we go. That's the top crossover frequency. And that's the bottom. That seems pretty okay. It sounds like a subwoofer. As much of a subwoofer that thing is going to sound like anyway. So let's swap out the other potentiometer as well. Rose Electronics says, after seeing your nice desoldering tool the other time, I've done some research to find one for a reasonable price. The brand name is Good. It's from Japan, about $100. Is it one of those integrated ones? That's just all in the handle. I've never tried one of them. Ah, we have some annoying dupe there. Is that gonna melt? Please melt. Yeah, it's melting. So we're just replacing this potentiometer as preventative maintenance. It hasn't actually failed yet. But since its identical brother has failed, we want to get rid of it. Better safe than sorry. I think I might keep this subwoofer myself rather than get rid of it. Because it's sealed. I like sealed speakers. You can equalize them to shit as long as you don't listen loud. Is this going to come off? Seems like it. Quality Song. Is that some kind of Sony clone? Song potentiometers. So does this one? Is this one wired up like the other one has 2 voltage dividers in parallel? That would make my life much easier. Does this even have? Is this even using both trays of the pots? This seems suspicious. I think we might be able to get away with a mono pot for this one. There are not many tracks wired up for it, so let's have a closer look under a microscope. So we have no traces at all, save for one ground on the top of the board. And for the inner trays, we actually have nothing hooked up at all, so we can use a mono potentiometer for this. There's absolutely no point hooking anything up to the inner trace where it's not hooked to anything. They've just used a stereo potentiometer because they already were using one. That's good. Dicks, we're using a stereo potentiometer anyway because I only have logarithmic stereo pots and linear mono pots, so oh well. Oh well. Doesn't matter. Scott and even says, I just fixed my own M-Audio AV4Ts which needed the caps replaced, but I also managed to lift some pads, so it took much longer to fix than expected. As is very often the case. Right, so I'm just gonna... Geez, this does not look high quality at all. This is some big gaps in the plastic, and this is actually a brand name, a high quality potentiometer. Oh well. I'm just gonna take a bit of wire for the 3 leads which we need. Should you be watching that? Probably. That's going to give you more of the action. That's 1 wire. That's 2 wires. Oh, that's 3 wires. Now, if you were here for the last stream, you'll remember that we had a weirdness with the plus minus 12 volt power supply. The voltages for that are actually still weird, but it seems to be working just fine anyway. So I think I'm just going to ignore that issue and pretend it's not a big deal. I would imagine it's by design. Because this thing, it's clearly rather bodged together. They haven't had a good technician like lay this thing out. It's got a million little bodges everywhere and rather questionable circuits. It's obviously working right now. Now the big question becomes, do we go through and recap the entire thing since we know all the caps are starting to go bad, or are we going to wait for them to fail first? I have no idea how old this model actually is. I think it's still a current model, so it can't be that old. It's obviously out of warranty though, since else it wouldn't be here. And I need to figure some better way out to get overhead video. I have this little camera arm which is like not quite long enough. It's just not quite long enough. Tilting it clearly is not working very well. There we go. So we will do this up like so. And like so. That's going to be fine. This thing is probably just set up as a voltage divider across in series and over the input signal at some point, so I wouldn't imagine this, oh that's hot, I wouldn't imagine replacing this potentiometer is going to cause any funny business with any crossover frequencies and such. I think we're going to get through scot-free. Okay, there's that mounted in place to absolutely horribly mounted potentiometer. Ah, that's so bad. So let's play us the song of our people again and make sure we haven't ruined anything. I'm starting to question my choice to replace the 0.22 microfarad cap with a 0.47. It might, with a 1 microfarad, we might perhaps want to do like a 0.47 instead. I think we might be a bit too extremely low frequency for what is still a rather small subwoofer. This thing is annoying to hook up. Do we have any horrible short circuits? Nah, we're going to figure it out if we do. Volume turned down. Let's try this thing on again and see if it makes any noise. This really does seem like a frequency that's high enough for a subwoofer. It's clearly going to like 100 Hz. It is definitely lower than it would have been originally. but I never like the default crossovers on these things. They're just always too high frequency. Yeah, let's just leave it like this. I'll make it my own little toy. It's gonna be fine. So let's swap out the electrolytic caps on the tone board, because this thing has to be glued back together. We know these caps are liking to go bad, and I'd just rather have them out of the way so I don't have to ever go into this box again. So that means we're replacing one 47 microfarad and one 10 microfarad capacitor. I'm going to fetch those right now. Now the question is, are these in the signal chain or not? We actually need to verify that, because for low ESR caps, they sometimes cause issues because they have a slightly higher leakage current than non-low ESR ones. And yeah, this one is actually, the 10 microfarad one is definitely in the signal chain. It's the input filter cap. So we really want to use an audio grade capacitor or a non-low ESR cap for that. Now the 47 on the other hand, yeah, that seems, no wait, positive goes to a resistor, goes to a power LED. Let's pair this thing on and see if we just have a big DC voltage across that. I would imagine that's just a rectifier, basically. You can't see the multimeter, you'll have to take my word for the voltage. 1.4 volts. It doesn't go brrr when I touch it. That's an oddity. I have no idea where this 10 microfarad cap is actually connected. We have it here. This stupid camera, man. Just point in a direction that makes sense, please. There we go. Yes, so this is our 47 mic capacitor. It's got its positive lead. Where's the negative lead going? It's going somewhere. So the negative lead is going to something, the positive lead is going to a resistor, that's going to the power LED. And it's also going to like something over there, and what's that? It's going to, oh, it might be, I think this is the auto switch, so it might be the hysteresis cap for the auto mode. So auto is the middle position. Ah, this switch is really annoying. I would imagine that's the hysteresis capacitor for the auto mode. That would make sense since it's also hooked up to the power LED. So that one's probably not going to be in the audio chain. So the 10 microfarad should be an audio capacitor, just because it's going to have a lower leakage current. And the 47 microfarad can be a low ESR, that's fine. Robin Vandenide is asking, auto mode, question mark? Like most subwoofers, this thing has a feature where you set the power switch to auto, and it'll, even if you have it plugged in, and powered on, it'll turn like the big power supply off when it's not receiving a signal, and when it gets signal, it'll just go pop and turn on. So you don't have to go and manually switch it off every time. So negative of a 10 microfarad is towards the big power resistors. The solder they have used does not like to flow. It really does not like to flow. There we go. The auto mode on most subwoofers is, in my opinion, completely useless because it's always set to a much too high trigger level. I've never owned a subwoofer which I've been able to use on auto mode because I listen to music so softly usually that it either just ends up power cycling on and off depending on which song I'm listening to, or it'll just never ever turn on. Which is a shame. It's a good power saving feature. There we go. That's our audio cap. Now let's do the hysteresis cap. What I'm assuming is the hysteresis cap. Is the polarity marking correct? Yes, it is. 777 Music Official says, someone remember there's YouTube's credential? What? What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? There we go. That's loose. It was lying down, like so, so we need to very nicely bend the legs. That's how you bend legs, never by the rubber plug. 777 Music Official says, keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. I will. Come on, in you go. In enough. Now we have a bit of a terrible thing going on, because I have swapped out these two op amps for some terrible Chinese 5532 clones that are probably not going to be reliable. The original op amps, which are probably in good working order, are actually proper JRC ones. But whatever, let's just say the China 5532s are going to be good enough. Now, we have a few unsoldered holes here, and we need to actually plug those with solder due to the way this thing is gasketed around the outside edge. So if we don't plug those holes, this thing is going to be whistling at us because there's going to be a leakage path for air we go, that's the holes plugged. Looks so fancy with a golden cap there. And let's also like just put some oiled contact cleaner in these switches while we're here. I don't usually use the oiled stuff, but on these switches it's good because it will leave a bit of a oily residue on top of the contacts, which stops them oxidizing. Since these switches are not operated very often, it's important to make sure that they are exposed to as little oxygen as possible, and the oily contact cleaner stuff is decently good at that. Alright, are we gonna be good with this? I think so. I don't think it needs any more attention, so we'll put a gob of glue under each of those to make them a bit more stable in the long term. And let's throw all these bad caps that are lying everywhere away, because at least one of these has been reverse polarized, and we don't want to accidentally put that into something. Glue. Let's make absolutely sure everything's wired up correctly before we put it in. Yeah, it's fine. My glue has done its thing and glued itself shut. So I'm also going to glue one of those capacitors down because it's lying down. So this guy gets just a dribble. The rest of these components are probably fine. But of course, the potentiometers need to be glued down. They should be roughly the right thickness, so they should press up against this glue quite nicely when they're actually installed. And I just put a lot of glue on the foam gaskety thing down here, and then we just poke everything back together. White glue is... no, wait, that's going to sound incredibly racist. Let's not say things which could potentially sound racist. This thing, a good thing about this thing is that it's relatively free of a bad black glue. It's just got a little bit of it, and I don't think it's going to go bad because it's not running warm. There we go, that's a good glue gasket. Put the potentiometers in roughly where they're supposed to be. Yeah, good enough. Oh god, are the nuts gonna fit, or do I need to fetch some new ones? No, the nuts actually fit. Ish. Good enough. And I've already made a huge mess. So this module is not going to be held up to the case anywhere near as well as it used to be. I'm noticing that the potentiometers are not getting clamped down very well. They're not going to be touching the bottom of the PCB, so that glue was a complete waste. So we need to probably put a bit of extra glue on there just to make sure that the module actually clamps up against the glue gasket well enough. Because there's no mounting in this entire corner of a module, since it's just clamped down by these switches and the RCA plugs. And the RCA plugs actually have 2 screws, which is nice. Now we're soon going to find out that like the capacitor I put in there is going to be way too big value, and just going to make it impossible to use this thing. I should have probably put the capacitor on the back side of the board so it's easy to remove. That would have been a smart move, but oh well. It's going to be a real subwoofer. I think it's going to be fine. Now I should have cut the little nub on these potentiometers as well. I don't think they can actually sit particularly flush. No, they're not. Oh well. It's fine. Now actually bolting these down is going to be a bit annoying, since there's nothing to really hold them in place. The old ones were firmly mounted to the PCB, but these ones are not, so they just want to spin around. Well, maybe that's fine. They don't need to be airtight anyway. And now we need to just really poke this glue around so it actually seals around the outer edge of the PCB as well, since we have very little clamping force holding this thing in. If we're not thorough with this, it's going to be whistling at us, especially since this is not a ported subwoofer. So it's going to have higher pressures inside than your typical ported one. Or more pressure differentials, I should say. We should probably also glue that speaker relay that's been replaced in a rather interesting manner in place with some better glue. It's just got a gob of hot glue underneath it, and that's just not going to last at all. I need just another drop of glue. And this stupid thing is growing glue in all the wrong places. Oh Well, you can't see shit, but I can't see shit either, so it's fair. Now there went the cap for my glue. I'm gonna have to go on a crazy hunt for that. And gluing the replacement relay, just putting a bunch of stuff there. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. That should be reasonably good. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna leak. Ooh. Glue cap fetched. Robin van der Knight says, at least we get to see the stream cap. Yes, indeed. Hey, you get to see a successful repair as well. Because this thing is fixed. And improved. And mucked with in a way that's probably going to make me regret it at some point, but oh well. I really should have put the 1 microfarad capacitor on this side of the board. I really should have. But there's no game back now. Now I do wonder what's happened here. There's like a bunch of dust and crap. Oh, we do need to glue those capacitors as well. Do we want to swap out more capacitors in this thing? I mean, we really should. We really should, and it's not difficult to do, so let's just do at least the small electrolytics. We've got a 47, a 2.2, 222s, 110, 147. Yeah, 222s, 110, 147. Let's just do them. One 2.2, 222s. No, wait. There was a 47 there somewhere as well. Yeah, something like that. Does we do the glue last? I thought I was doing the glue last, but we had some change of plans. So we have a 47 in there, with a negative towards the little transistor next to it. I think we've activated those holes. That was a 47. With negative towards the little transistor. I really cannot see any more than you can. video says disconnected, reconnecting. Okay. Reconnection successful. Let's hope that's not a lie. Chat says we had a hiccup, but we're back. Well, good. That was odd. Rather that than what happened last time when OBS just crashed and refused to work anymore. And there's a capacitor with a negative towards the top. Negative towards what is right now up. Okay. Negative towards what is right now up, and that's a 2.2. And we have, I think that's a 10 microfarad down there. Where are you? There you are. The labels on this board are really nice. They have everything labelled on the bottom of the board. It's such a shame that we can't trust it since one of the labels was the wrong way around. Negative towards up. Ten microfarad. This is going to be very interesting. Oh wow, one-shotted it. One-shotting capacitor installation with tweezers is basically a miracle. Robin Vandenide asks, any particular reason your window blinds are down? It's winter, it's black and cold outside, there's nothing to see there. There's just nothing to see. And my windows are terrible, old and not particularly energy efficient, so having the blinds down is saving me a decent amount of money. Like if I take the blinds down up, I just feel a massive amount of cold air just falling down. Not because the windows are leaking, but because they are conducting so much heat. And they're decent fit to the window, so they actually lie pretty tightly against everything. So we basically get an extra layer of air insulation going there. And I'm cheap, so I'm not going to waste any money unless I have to. I have a 22 microfarad down there. Negative towards me. Negative towards me. Now this solder they've used just doesn't want to flow. It just doesn't want to flow. 22 microfarads negative towards me. Come on. Out you come. Out you come. 22 microfarads. Oh, come on. Burning plastic. Simon Zeberg says you're better than the pick and place machines. Well, I would imagine I'm more entertaining at least. That was 22 microfarad, wasn't it? We'll poke one in there. So if you're just joining us, we have solved the issue of this speaker. It was a bad tone control potentiometer. The crossover frequency part was bad quality and it had failed. And now we're just recapping this thing for good measure since it's in good working order now. And I like it. I'm thinking this is going to fit decently well with the Audio Engine 2s. I think I'll just pair it up with them in the kitchen or something. You always do the glue last. You always do the glue last. Because else there's glue everywhere. There are times when it's appropriate for your life to be a white sticky mess, and then there are times when it's very inappropriate. And this is one of the times where it's very inappropriate. Snibbedy snib. Do we have any more caps? I think there's a 10 microfarad somewhere. Oh yeah, no, it's a 22 microfarad. It's hiding underneath a rectifier there. Negative towards the top of the board. And it would be that there. Annoying sold on this thing. I would have to rip this out with the pliers. Well, I'm about to cut a wire. Come on. Out you come. And that is a 22 microfarad capacitor. In you go. More glue. Now there are a few more capacitors in the power supply for the preamp board as well, which we should probably do. I mean, one of them had exploded and all. But it was installed backwards from the factory, so perhaps we shouldn't use that as a judge for the reliability of the rest of them. Oh, Jesus Christ, they are basically impossible to get at. They are behind all this crap. But I think we might be able to walk them out. Yeah, I think we might be able to walk them out. We'll give it a go. We will give it a go. Burning plastic. So that's one. The markings are correct. That's 2. The markings are correct. These are 220 microfarads. And there's one final 100 microfarads, like right down at the bottom. Right down at the bottom. And the marking was correct for that one as well. That's 3 for 3 correct markings. That's good for this device. As we can't access that with the desoldering pump, so we have to waste some braid evacuating those holes. And since they've used terrible solder, we also need to waste some flux. Oh God, this is going to be annoying. It's all down in the black glue. Again, if you're just joining us, we've already actually repaired this thing. The issue was a failed crossover potentiometer. We put new potentiometers in. We also modified the crossover filter a bit, just to give it a bit more low-end oomph without having it be screeching 100 Hz at us. And now we're just recapping it for good measure, and we're going to be putting it back together shortly. Come on. This solder braid is rather old and bad. I'm trying to use it up as best as I can. I just want to get rid of it. That's one hole evacuated. That's 2 out of 4 holes evacuated. This solder wick is not amazing. There we go. That's all the holes evacuated. So we wanted two 220 25 volt capacitors and one 125, I believe. Yes. Well, 100, anything is going to turn into 150. So there's another 100 microfarad 50. Just need to fetch the 220s. Two 2025. We're using 220 35 because that's what I have a lot of. Rubicon ZLH. Humans can't breathe water. So we're going to start with the 100 microfarad because it's at the bottom. Cut the legs to a reasonable length and try and shove it in there. The keyword really being try because this is basically impossible to access. I can't see anything. Can't see anything at all. This is just extremely fiddly. Come on. We have a wrong pin spacing on this replacement cap, so it's just making it extra fiddly. Now I'm gonna cut a new one with the longer legs because that was just impossible to get in. So longer legs, and we'll cut one longer than the other so we can get one in before the other. That should make it a bit easier. Something like that. Yes, that made it a lot easier because it's in now. Beautiful. So we'll solder that. I'm not going to bother cutting the leads, I think, because they're fine. That's good enough. And now we get the two 220s in there, which should be a lot easier to get at. Should be a lot easier to get at. They should have a correct pin spacing as well. That's one. And let's actually pre-cut the leads on these because it's going to be annoying to access to cut afterwards. That's one. Please stay in place for just a moment while I solder you. It's not going to stay in place. It is definitely not going to stay in place, so I need to hold it. There we go. I keep melting plastic everywhere. There we go. That's one soldered in. Just one more to go, and I think we're done. Because I don't think we're going to bother doing the big caps, they're too expensive. That said, it is rather common for these consumer subwoofers to actually get failures in the big electrolytic filter caps. They tend to go open circuit, and then things just break everywhere. There we go. And that would be soldered in. So I think we have a decently recapped power amplifier board now. Let's verify. I'm only seeing capacitors which are not original, so that's good. I would like to put the original relay in, but I don't think we actually have the original relay. Or maybe the weird bodge relay is actually a factory thing. It could be. Like, this is weird. They have a footprint for a small relay there. Someone's just glued a big relay there with like long wires going to it. It's not a big deal, but it looks ugly and it might fall off. So let's give this thing a quick work through on like the common issues on every subwoofer power amplifier. That is in particular bad solder joints on the emitter resistors. They love falling off the board, so I'm going to resolder those. That would be this, I think. We can use the fat solder for that. It's going to be that joint there as well. Solder joint. And the other one's probably there, I think. Yeah, I think that was those. We also have a bunch of freestanding little 3-pin devices like these guys here that I want to redo as well. Blur is saying, good evening, hyvää iltaa. Hyvää iltaa to you as well, Blur. I don't speak Finnish, but I do know what that means because you just translated it for me. There's a bunch of gluey stuff here that I'm just soldering through. I'm sure it's fine. I have a rectifier also freestanding, so we want to resolder that. Heavy freestanding and hot components. They just love to fall off the board. There we go, that's a rectifier. Do we want to do the big caps as well? Probably. The big caps probably want to fall off the board. They're big and heavy as well. This is when the heat of the soldering iron causes one of these guys to go open circuit. Because these cheap big capacitors, they just love to go open circuit for no reason when they get a couple of years behind them. I'm not sure why, it just seems to always happen. It's always worth checking them if they're like, if you have a failed speaker, it's just worth measuring the big rectifier caps to see if they're actually capacitors anymore. They tend to just be nothing at all. The pin just like basically falls off internally. Okay, are we starting to be somewhat in shape here? Do we have any more random heavy components that are likely to fall off? Well, the transformer. Although it is zip tied down, I'm just gonna reflow it quickly. There we go, I can't be bothered getting the other side because there's a foam pad on it. Let's just say that's fine. Do we have any other obvious problems here? Nothing really obvious. We've put too much time into this thing already, so let's give it a final test and then reassemble it in its proper enclosure. There's a handful of candy. Go in the trash. So we'll hook the speaker up. There we go, test speaker hooked up. Now we want signal and power. That's signal and there's power. Power on. Let's see what happens. This is playing just fine. That's the maximum crossover frequency. The minimum is really low. I like this. I'm really excited to hear how this is going to sound with the actual subwoofer driver, because it looks to be a good quality speaker otherwise. So let's just put the final bit of glue on the capacitors we replaced last night, because they're just hanging free there and they're going to fall off. I threw my toothpick away. There we go. They're glued down as well. There's some attempt at glue on most things that matter. So I think we're fine to just put this back together. So we need to get rid of the test speaker with its beautiful sock. Port socks. The best thing ever. And get the actual enclosure. And let's wipe my hands off so I don't get white glue all over the piano black subwoofer enclosure. Godzilla941 says, this video keeps reminding me that I need to replace the filter caps in my HD 12 PWR sub since it's recently developed a 120-foot hum. The hard part is digging that out of this mess to get the plate amp. You need to be careful. Just jumping to the conclusion that it's the filter caps. That's a phone call. I'm always on duty, but we'll have to wait till we're done here. So here comes the speaker. And let's look at the driver if you're curious. Looks pretty nice. Decently sized magnets. And it's actually got a die-cast frame of some sort. If that's dusty and disgusting, let's just keep the cover on. So yeah, this really is a sealed subwoofer, which is very nice. Quite nice and thick material as well. It's probably more than 22mm MDF. Like, this thing is relatively well built, save for the electronics, which just suck. Like, come on, who uses a transformer in their subwoofer power supply? Who uses a bloody Class AB amplifier? That's just bad form. That just screams cheap trash. Ah, geez, these connectors are not making a good connection. We need to give them a squeeze. Squeeze, squeeze. Oh god, I'm getting glue all over myself. Oh, that's much better. There we go. Driver connected. Ah, we should actually reinstall the zip tie here that holds all the wiring in place. It could rattle otherwise. Always have zip ties at an arm's length. Zip. Do we need to zip tie? Yeah, there was a zip tie there as well, so we're putting back all the zip ties. And in it goes. Of course, the zip tie is catching on the enclosure. There we go. And we have like 1 million screws for this thing. We need to not ruin the thread on these. You need to always, when you're reassembling these, turn the screw to the left until it finds the thread. Because if you cross thread into MDF, you're just in for a bad time. It's not gonna ever go in properly that way. You end up with a plate temp that's just falling off. Turn left and hold reasonable pressure on the screwdriver, and it just falls into the thread. And you can tighten it down. Station 240 says, my subwoofer is acting up too. Isolated to the sub preamp as the other channels are fine. Lots of lowest value electrolytics in that area of the PCB. Yeah, if it's a few years old, you're just in for, well, doing what we've been doing today. I think that clicked. I'm just gonna thread these in and then we'll do them with a drill. Exciting screwing action, only on the FFcossag channel. One and two. We even have all the screws, every single one. That's not always a given when I get these pre-disassembled things. There's the thread. Okay, we're getting the drill. That should be okay. I always want to go around twice because you can press the gasket ever so slightly the first time around. So if you don't go around twice, you're going to have low torque on the screws you started with. There we go. Rightio, it's time for a first test with a proper driver installed. Let's make the dust fly off the cone. Oh. Phase 0, 18 on. Power on. Something's definitely leaking. No, it wasn't. It was just the high level screws weren't installed properly. Oh, this is going to be nice at a really low crossover frequency. That's not bad. Sealed subwoofers are nice. Let's see what we can work here. If we can get the so now we're playing with the big speakers up top. And we can add some subwoofering. Oh god, we have a YouTube audio on. that's okay. I don't mind that at all. Blur says, can barely hear the low end on my crappy headphones. There isn't that much low end. This isn't a super bassy song either. Yeah, I guess that's it. That's a silly problem solved on a somewhat silly but still reasonably nice subwoofer. All we needed was some brand new volume control potentiometers and a bit of reworking of the filter to make it a bit more low rangey, better for my tastes. Some people like the 150 Hz boompa doomp bass. I don't. All my speakers could aim to 40 Hz anyway. I need something below that. So with that, I'm gonna have to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.